Hey everyone, this is Tankenstein coming to you live and direct from Livernoor, the center of everywhere, to bring to you today your complete and comprehensive video on all things Assault Air and Assault Ground Arcade. I will be going over quite a bit in this video, including where to find these modes, what exactly they are, what to do and what not to do in them, and also to give you some pro tips and tricks. So please remember, like, comment, subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into it. And just to start, I'll show you exactly where to find these modes. So if you look here, normally where you find your mode selector button, you have everything, your main modes here. You can click on Assault Air Arcade and Assault Ground Arcade right here. They are right in the middle. And as you can see, they do offer rewards. And they also offer Silver Lion and RP rewards normally for completing them or getting farther or doing better in them. So the better you do, the more kills you get, and then the farther you go, the more RP and Silver Lions you will get, and they will only apply to the vehicles that you have selected. That being said, you can actually respawn in Assault Air Arcade and Assault Ground Arcade, albeit at the cost of Silver Lions. Typically, if you're doing well enough, you should be able to not only pay for these Silver Lions with the end game result, but you will also be able to make money on them. That being said, you will also get a booster at the end, as you can see here. It is a 50 to 300% booster. You get a larger booster the longer you go in the mode. Even if you get one kill in Assault Air or Assault Ground Arcade, you will get this booster. And if your team wins, you will also get the 300% booster and the universal backup. So it's a really nifty reward here, and that is the same on Ground Assault Arcade. It's the same exact reward, except the backup is for air on Air Assault and for ground and Ground Assault. Also, one thing to note here, as you can see, there's a 1.0 to 2.3 and then so on and so forth, different BRs that you can fly here. Keep in mind these are arcade BRs, so they are a little bit different from realistic if you are used to playing those. And also, you will want to use the highest BR, fastest plane with the best cannons possible. You will see a ton of F4Es at the top level, or F4Cs even. That's just because they've got ridiculous amounts of bursts, because you will be taking down bombers. There is no real air-to-air combat. You can be shot down by bombers in this. Keep in mind, it's very easy, even at the top ranks of jets, so keep in mind. But, I'll show you some pro tips and tricks here. Additionally, for ground, you will have the same structure, except it's not just 6.7 plus. It goes up to 8.0 and then 8.3 plus. This is because 8.3 tanks are way more effective against anything below 8.0 than planes are typically. I know that sounds kind of weird, but technically speaking, you can take a pea shooter and destroy an F4E Phantom, whereas here you are not going to take an anti-aircraft gun or a reserve level tank and destroy an M1A2 Abrams. Is just not going to happen. So they have to compensate for that, because 8.3 tanks plus have better armor, better guns, better ammo, and that makes all the difference. So just keep that in mind when choosing the vehicle that you want to use here. But because this is Assault Air Arcade and Assault Ground Arcade, you can have yourself a slew of vehicles. I could pick from any of these. You can respawn in one vehicle as many times as you want, but if you're finding that your particular vehicle of choice is not working, for example, if I do not like my Tiger 2H for whatever reason in this match, I could switch to a Panther G or a Jagd Panther. Totally up to me. Or the RU-251. It really does not matter. And you will just pay the corresponding repair or spawn costs for that. That being said, let's just get into the actual game mode itself, and I'll just show you some tips and tricks when it comes to Assault Air Arcade and also Ground Assault Arcade. So Ground and Air Assault Arcade are very similar game modes in that you will have to work with a group of allies that are human to defeat a bunch of bots that are continuously assaulting your base. When it comes to Assault Air Arcade, you will have to defend against heavy bombers primarily, but you will also have to defend against light and medium bombers, occasionally attack aircraft, and also ground units, primarily made up of howitzers. These units will attack your base if you do not destroy them quickly enough. For example, with the bombers, they have to fly a certain distance in order to reach your base. Once they get within bombing distance, You will see huge chunks of health coming from your base. Your base does not have a ton of health. As well as with the ground units, you will have to destroy them because after a few seconds, they do start taking small chunks out of your base. And again, it is very important to go after them because they are kind of widely forgotten, especially at lower BRs. Just keep in mind that you will have to destroy them. On the top there, you do see a bar. One is blue, one is red. The red bar is the enemy wave bar. The lower that is, the closer you are to victory. On the left is your base health bar. The lower that is, the closer you are to defeat. So keep all that in mind. One other thing really that you are going to want to keep in mind here is that when it comes to air assault and ground assault arcade, you cannot use any orders, wages, or boosters in order to boost the eventual output from this game mode. So you will get a good amount of RP and Silver Lions at the end, assuming you complete this, plus you will get a booster, but you cannot directly have those modified by boosters. However, if you do have a premium account, that will affect your outcome from the match and will also give you, really just a substantial amount of income. Keep in mind that when you do die, you do have to respawn, or you should respawn really, and it will cost you Silver Lions in order to do so. Typically, it is at a discounted rate, and I believe it is directly impacted by how many modifications and of what type you have on your plane. So just keep that in mind as well. So, insofar as my advice is concerned, my pro tips and tricks, I've done dozens of these, and I think I found the best ways to get you the most reward for the least amount of effort, and it really just relies on you being smart about everything with this. So, ideally, you're going to want to pick the fastest plane in your arsenal that also has a good weapon loadout. Oftentimes for propeller planes, this is heavy fighters like the TA-154, or for jet fighters, it's going to be the absolute fastest plane that you have. If you have the F-100 Super Sabre, for example, that would be sufficient. The F-4E is currently the top dog with this because not only is it among the fastest planes in the game, but it has the most ridiculous loadout. And you will see time and time again when it comes to Assault Air Arcade that the F4s are the top dog, whether it's the C or the E. You see more E's right now just because they're the newer plane, but either one would work just as well. And you're going to just want to make sure that you hit, as you can see in my video, that you hit the enemy heavy bombers from a high angle. If you shoot at them and you go through them at their altitude, it will be like flying through a very tightly clustered asteroid field. Not a good idea. You will be shot to pieces, you will be pelted with bullets, and you'll be destroyed regardless the speed that you're moving. This is especially true for propeller planes because even though in a jet you can do really well with your speed and you will still be hit, with propeller planes it's even easier to be hit and you will be destroyed even quicker. Additionally, you will want to go for ground forces. So if you do not have the fastest plane in the match, definitely start looking at attacking the ground forces. They only appear once every 3 or 4 rounds, give or take, but they are an extremely important part of this game, and they will lead you to get actually a fair amount of points. So if you're that guy who's always on the ground targets, the howitzers and all that, good. We need you. If you can only muster a 7 or a 7.3, 7.7, whatever plane, and that's what you want to use in Assault Air Arcade, go for ground targets. Or if you just so happen to be positioned near the next spawn for air targets, fine. But if you're facing F4s and even F100s, and you're in an ME-262, for example, or even an A4, what's going to happen is that they're going to hit it before you. Not only that, but they're going to wreck probably about 90% of those planes before you even get a chance to get within a kilometer or two of them. So just make sure that the plane that you decide to pick for this game mode fits for the task that you're doing. So in summation, I would say the top 3 things that you're going to want to do are approach at a high altitude, especially when it comes to heavy bombers. That is first and foremost. Pick your planes, right? make sure that you have the best combination of speed and armament. That's huge. And 3, make sure that whatever plane you do have is good for this and good for the role that you want. Again, if you do happen to be in a slow plane, do not chase after the planes that are 20 kilometers away and your entire team is 10 miles or 10 kilometers closer to those planes than you. Not a good idea. So pick your targets, make sure that your distancing is appropriate. This can be relayed in any War Thunder game mode, as I'm sure you've probably seen 4 people chasing after a single bomber in low to mid BR matches. Do not be that guy. You will not have the speed, especially in Air Assault Arcade, when everyone is on your team and you're all going after the same targets. So again, approach from a high altitude, use a strong, fast plane, and also pick the targets that you're closest to, regardless. Okay? That's your key to not only doing really well, but to making sure that you win in Assault Air Arcade. So, as I mentioned before, Ground Assault and Air Assault Arcade are very, very similar in many ways, but there are some key differences. So, while you still are on a team and you're defending against a horde of computer enemies, there are, again, some differences. So, one, in Air Assault Arcade, as I had mentioned before, you can destroy essentially any plane in the game with essentially any other plane, so long as that plane is equipped with some sort of weaponry, whether offensive or defensive. In this, you will find, obviously, if you play tanks for anything or you know anything about tanks, shells have a tendency to deflect, they have a tendency to not penetrate sometimes, and things like that. So there are some difficulties, and it will more likely than not lead to a lower success rate coming from Ground Assault Arcade, no matter how good you are. You will also have to face 3 different groups of tanks, essentially 2 or 3, coming at you from separate directions, which makes it very difficult. And on top of that, you also have aircraft flying above you that occasionally try to rocket you, they try to bomb you. It really depends on the BR that you're on and the types of tanks and planes that you're facing, but it is quite hectic. There's a lot to consider, and for many reasons, for those reasons, it's far more difficult than Assault Air Arcade. So that being said, my best pieces of advice for you when it comes to Assault Air or Ground Arcade are the following. So you're going to want to have a tank of decent mobility to get from point to point for defensive purposes. You should not sacrifice too much armor for speed, being that there are so many tanks shooting at your tank and they will eventually hit you, regardless of speed. In my opinion, I would try to go for a smaller tank too. That way you can sit behind the various points of defense here and really just make sure that your tank does not get destroyed. If you have a high-up tank such as the King Tiger and with a weak turret face, especially facing advanced ammo, they will be able to wreck your tank in no time. Additionally, you do want a tank that can most consistently destroy enemy tanks via both advanced ammunition and a good gun. And so, even though I'm picking the RU-251, I feel like it complies with my advice pretty well. So, unfortunately, there's not really a great German tank for this at 6.7 facing the tanks that we have, that we are facing. They are advanced tanks. I fought a Leopard in this match. You have the M48 as well. It's just advanced ammunition that can just wreck World War II tanks. So, in that way, I would pick a post-World War II tank, because if I'm being destroyed in 1 hit or 2 hits, maybe even 3 with my King Tiger, then I wouldn't necessarily fare much worse if I get destroyed in 1 or 2 hits with my RU-251 that is much more effective with speed and ammunition. And also its cannon, it might not be as accurate as the King Tiger in many respects, but it is still really good. Plus, you do, again, get the speed. So there are many things that you do have to consider. But again, my advice when it comes to a tank, my pro tip and trick would be to have a tank with decent mobility, good armor, good speed, and good firepower. You're going to want to have a combination of all that, but my other tip here is to sit behind cover. You're going to want to make sure that you are not visible from all sides, and they set it up so that you will be visible from every part of the tank advance. So whether they're coming at you from the north, the south, wherever, there's not enough cover to protect you from all sides. So be aware and be in cover for the side that's closest to you, and make sure that you're hidden from the back or the sides as well as possible, because that is still possible to do, to hide your tank from the rear and the flanks, but you do again want to make sure that you're doing it wisely. And finally, really, my final piece of advice here is to be aware of the skies at all points. Even though I'm not going to say you should get yourself an anti-aircraft vehicle for this, because they cost a ton to respawn and the payout is just not there in this game mode, they are still going to be everywhere. So if you can have something with some sort of defensive anti-aircraft armament, for example, the RU-251 has a decent one. It's got 2 LMGs, which do damage the ME-262 in this match. You might be okay, but otherwise, I mean, it's a far more difficult sort of task doing ground assault arcade than it is air. But if you do follow those key points of advice, you should find yourself getting more kills than not. Typically, more armor will relate to less deaths. So in this match, I did die actually a bit more than I expected, but I also wound up with, if not the most kills, the second most kills. And that was even considering how many times I died. So either way, tell me what you guys think about this video. I hope I really helped you, learn about Assault Air and Ground Arcade. There's a lot to go into it, but it comes out, where you get the same rewards at the end of each of them. They're really rewarding, really fun, and just something that everyone should participate in War Thunder. Either way, again, this is Tankenstein. I'm not saying goodnight, just saying. Hope you guys have a great day, a great night, a great whatever it is you're doing, and I will see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.